is no secret that majority of individuals adore puppies, kittens, and animals of all kinds because they offer comfort, companionship, and a love that is just undescribable. Unfortunately, a lot of these animals are admitted into shelters, and there are different kinds of shelters, which can be defined as municipal shelters, which are shelters that open to the public and they must admit every animal that comes their way, or private shelters where they can pick and choose, and the other two are commonly known as kill shelters or no-kill shelters. Now, the term no-kill is a lovely myth, but the reality is that there are still far more dogs and cats than there are homes for them. And the promotion of no-kill has only resulted in more animal suffering, not less, according to the Washington Post April 26, 2019 edition. Many individuals don't understand that no-kill doesn't mean that the shelter won't euthanize the animals or that these animals may stay in cages for an extensive amount of time. In order to combat this issue, we must be educated in the implications of this topic. Today I'll be talking to you about the problems, causes, and solutions of no-kill shelters. First, let's talk about the problems. Now, the issues concerning this topic are rather complicated because the term no-kill would mean that it's a great idea. However, there's no universal definition that really claims this term to be good or bad. As reported in the Weblog Post March 30th, 2018 edition, the most common misconception of no-kill shelters is that it never kills, though it's clearly what it implies. Instead, it's a shelter that has a 90% live release rate, meaning that 9 of every 10 animals admitted leaves alive. This means that these shelters will not kill healthy animals. However, if they are sick, elderly, or determined to be in too much pain, these animals will be treated or given palliative care. Now, these animals will also be euthanized if the pain cannot be managed or if they are deemed to be harmful to society. This is extremely misleading to people as they are under the impression that no-kill shelters literally mean that no killing will take place. It's also up to the shelters and how they promote and publicize their euthanization standards. The term no-kill is different for different people. Like I mentioned, some shelters can euthanize up to 10% of the animals for reasons of health and temperament issues and still considered to be no-kill, according to the Washington Post January 23rd, 2019 edition. It's appalling to contemplate this issue. However, when shelters give in to the pressure to go no-kill before they overcome the breeding and selling of animals in their communities or establishing the sufficient spaying and neutering services, the results are far worse for animals than a peaceful death through euthanization. According to the University Wire September 15th, 2019 edition, if all shelters become a no-kill system, the homeless animal population would skyrocket because there's not enough safe and loving homes for these animals. And shelters are also going to become desperate to have these animals adopted, in which they will accidentally place them into the care of unfit owners, hoarders, and abusers. This happens to a lot of the no-kill shelters because they will turn away the animals that public and open admitted shelters will blindly accept, and this will also shuffle around animals from shelter to shelter, making them suffer in scary, uncomfortable, and unfamiliar environments for years in some cases. Now that I've talked to you about the problems, let's talk about the causes. Now, the causes of the issue stem from good intentions. Volunteers at shelters have one thing in common, and that's the fact that they love animals. However, the main cause, according to the University Wire September 26, 2019 edition, is that the irresponsible pet owners who surrender the animals or recklessly allow them to reproduce, and the greedy breeders and the people who support them are the real enemy of this problem. Because they lack urgency or knowledge to spay or neuter their animal, that allows for the reproduction of animals to occur. And also, by not giving the right love and attention to these animals will make them surrender their pet to shelters. And if they just accepted the responsibility and committed to that, then that would obviously lower the chances of their animals to end up in shelters. And if their greedy breeders do not practice this inhumane tactic, there wouldn't be an excessive need for reproducing. Now that I've talked to you about the causes, let's talk about the solutions. Now, the solutions concerning this issue are mainly dependent on humans and what we do in order to practice these, tips in order to get these animals out of shelters and into homes. According to the Los Angeles Times August 27, 2018 edition, some ways that can help aid this issue are simply spreading the information to adopt through social media, through celebrations. Instead of asking for gifts, maybe ask for donations, so that these shelters can have the right materials and capacity to hold such animals. Also to adopt and not shop. And the Targeted News Service January 28th, 2018 edition also suggests that one of the most essential things is to have your animals spayed or neutered in order to diminish the rise of numbers and increase the amount of animals that get admitted to these shelters. And most importantly, by just taking proper care and giving the right attention to your animals will also lower the chances. If there wasn't such a high demand for these animals to have a place to stay, the shelters that take care of the animals that are found on the streets or injured can receive the proper attention and care that it requires. Clearly, there are viable solutions. Today, I've talked to you about the problems, causes, and solutions of no-kill shelters, and it's important to note that in an ideal world, every shelter would be a no-kill shelter. However, there are simply too many stray and abandoned animals to accommodate in terms of space, water, food, and veterinary care. And at the end of the day, every shelter has a goal of finding safe and loving homes for as many animals as possible. They just do it in different ways. No shelter is really the enemy. The real culprit is the careless pet owners who give up the animals or recklessly allow breeding to occur, making them reproduce excessively. And most importantly, the selfish breeders and the people who advocate for their actions that ultimately aid this issue. So if you have a furry friend or pet or planning to get one in the near future, make sure you do the correct research in order to sufficiently support them and take care of them appropriately. And always encourage your friends and families and those around you to do the same.